歡迎各位觀眾收睇周一長談，我係你哋呢一集嘅節目主持人梁英年。今日咧，我請嚟喺 BC 省官式反對黨，亦都係我哋其中一個嘅省議會裏面嘅政黨，叫做 BC United。佢嘅黨領 Falcon 馮義幹咧，上嚟同大家講下呢個係咩黨嚟㗎？好似以前未聽過嘅，咁我咧等佢嚟介紹啦。So thank you very much for coming to the program, Mr. Falcon.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, first, your name, Falcon.
Yes.
Falcon is a big bird,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the Chinese Lunar New Year, this is the year of the dragon.
That's right.
Dragon, Falcon. They have some similarity.
I think so.
So
yes.
you are a leader
Yes.
of a political party,
Yes.
BC United.
That's
I
right.
just told our audience, not many people heard about this name before, BC United. What is it?
Sure. Well, first of all, the Chinese community know our party very well, BC Liberal Party.
Yeah.
So we have been, a government in British Columbia for, I was first elected in 2001 with Gordon Campbell, and we were in government until 2017 when the NDP formed a coalition with the Green Party and formed government. So everyone knows BC Liberals. We haven't changed as a party. We're the same party. We just changed our name to BC United. Because in part because we want to unite people, regardless of where they were born, what religious beliefs they have, wherever they live, rural or urban BC, we want to unite people together. And we also wanted to make sure that we got away from the old names of Liberal and Conservative and NDP and bring about a new name. That's what our members wanted to do. And so I think it's important to know we're very proud of our history as BC Liberals, same party, different name.
Now, you just mentioned you try to get away from those old names, Liberal, Conservative, NDP. How about left and right and middle in the political spectrum? Where are you standing in this spectrum?
Yeah, it's a very good question because I actually don't think people really think about themselves as being left, right, middle. I just think most people are common sense. They just want a government that is going to reduce the costs for taxpayers, make sure the healthcare system is there when they need it, keep our streets safe so that we don't have to walk our streets looking over our shoulder, worried about being attacked by strangers. Those are the basic duties of government. And I don't know if that's left, right, or middle. I just think it's common sense. And so, I think we would probably be described as center-right as a party. We're not the extreme right. We're definitely not the extreme left. We're more the center-right, fiscally conservative, socially more liberal.
Now, for some people who know the history of British Columbia, in the old days, we have a social party, social credit.
Yes.
Are you going back to those days, just like the social credit? Now it's called BC United?
Yeah, a little bit, because the social credit name didn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
It was just a name. And BC United is similar. It's just a name where people can support us, even if they support the federal Liberals or the federal Conservatives. Provincially, they come together under BC United, and because we have a common opposition, and that's the NDP. Almost everyone agrees that the NDP are not good at running an economy, and I think we've got lots of evidence of that over the last 7 years that they've been in power.
Now, when you say you are not the NDP, the problem that you are facing is NDP is not just a provincial political party. They are everywhere. Mm-hmm. They are the federal NDP,
yes,
the provincial NDP, and municipally they use different names, but they are the same NDP,
yes,
same member.
Yes.
So they work together.
Yes.
Now you call yourself BC United, so you are not affiliated with any federal party, not the Liberal, not the Conservative, of course not the NDP. Mm-hmm. So you are fighting by yourself. You are not helped by the federal party or the municipal parties together. Mm-hmm. Are you fighting it just by yourself is more difficult?
No, and we're not by ourselves. We have lots of supporters in the Federal Conservative Party, we have supporters in the Federal Liberal Party, and even in the municipal parties that are helping us because we have common interests. And so, no, we have lots of allies that work with us that support either of the federal parties, but provincially support us.
Oh, so for people who are federal Liberal or federal Conservative, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're not affiliated with any of them,
no,
but you have the same principle, you're fighting the NDP.
Exactly. And even when we were provincial Liberals, BC Liberals, we were not connected to the federal Liberal
even
Party.
It's called Liberal, but it's not the same
That's
Liberal.
right. It was a totally separate party. Just like the BC Conservative Party has no connection to the federal Conservative Party. It just has the same name. So we wanted to have a name that makes everyone feel welcome.
Now, your mission is try to unite British Columbia, and you try to get away from this traditional liberal, conservative, left and right. But one of the effects of after forming the BC United, some of your BC Liberal members left your party, and BC Conservative is getting more attention. And some public opinion polls even say BC Conservative has more support than the BC United.
Yeah.
So your aim to unite, is not working, it's divide.
Well, first of all, I think you'll find that's not going to be the case. Most of the support, the vast majority of support that the BC Conservatives think they have is actually confusion. It's the public thinking about the federal Conservatives.
Because the wave is not blowing in that direction.
That's right. Well, and they're thinking Pierre Poilievre,
Yeah.
honestly. They don't even know who the leader of the BC Conservative Party is. So, and that's understandable because we only just started now our campaign to get the information, advertising campaign to let the public know. You know, the election is almost 10 months away. And over the next few months, you're going to hear a lot about Kevin Falcon and BC United. And we will make sure that we're advertising specifically in the Chinese Canadian community, in the South Asian community, and all the communities. And I feel very, very comfortable that when people realize, oh, Kevin Falcon, yes, he built the Canada line. He was part of the BC Liberals. Okay, it's the BC Liberals. They're now called BC United. Okay, we understand. We vote for them. They're, you know, common sense people.
Okay, now we understand now what is the BC United. Now let's talk about some of the issues.
Sure.
You said you are fiscal conservative.
Yes.
The economy in BC is not going anywhere.
No.
People find it more and more difficult to pay for their groceries, pay for their rent, not even thinking of buying the apartment. So affordability seems to be the main issue these days,
Yes. Yeah,
especially for our young people.
Absolutely.
Grocery price. It's not because of the big grocery chain, according to study, the profit margin have not increased, but we're paying more for our daily grocery. We're paying even more for our rent.
Yes.
CMHC said the rent increased 28% across the country in the last 2 years. Let's talk about the housing. What is the main reason why housing is so expensive in the lower mainland?
Sure.
Why rent keep on increasing?
Okay, so first of all, just on the affordability question, I do think it's very, very important for your viewers to understand how important it is to hold politicians accountable for results. Not what we promise, not what we say we're going to do, but actual results that we're getting. Because, you know, the NDP have been in power now for 7 years. And after 7 years, British Columbia has now become the most unaffordable, most expensive province in the country. Okay? That's not a good result. We have the highest housing prices, not just in Canada, but in North America. We have the highest average rents in all of Canada. We have the highest fuel prices in North America. And grocery price inflation in British Columbia is the highest in the country. So all of these have made it harder for British Columbians to survive. 50% of British Columbians, according to a major accounting firm, said that 50% of British Columbians are $200 a month away from not being able to meet their family budget. That's a big problem.
That is really bad.
So here's what we have to do. So first of all, let's talk housing. Now, the NDP, when they got elected in 2017, said they were going to make housing more affordable.
Yep.
That was number one. Number two, they said that they were going to build 114,000 affordable homes in 10 years. So let's see how they're doing. Housing affordability? No. We've now become the most expensive in North America. That's a bad result. The 114,000 promised affordable homes they were going to build in 10 years, they've built 16,000, and we're in year 7 of that 10-year plan.
So it's about 10% built.
Yeah.
After 7 years in their 10 years plan.
Exactly. So clearly those are bad results. So the reason is because they analyzed the problem the wrong way in the first place. So if you remember, all the way back in 2015, David Eby said that the problem with housing was Chinese people. He did a study of 133 homes on the west side of Vancouver that had non-English last names.
Look at their last name who owned those houses.
That's right. But we all know that we've had Chinese Canadians that have lived for generations in British Columbia. Just because you have a non-anglicized last name does not mean that you're a foreigner. you can very much be a Canadian that's lived here longer than David Eby. So I think that was not helpful, because that said to the public, oh, it's Chinese foreign purchasers that are driving up the problem. We now know that is actually not the case, that less than 5% of the purchasers are actually foreign buyers. What has happened is we have done two things. One, immigration has gone up very, very much, a lot. And there's no question that the federal government and the provincial governments have not worked together unified to deal with the large inflow of immigration. Because the first thing people do when they move to British Columbia is they're going to look for somewhere to live. And so if we're not keeping up with new supply being built, whether it's rental or market housing, we're not going to be able to meet that demand. So that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is the provincial government. The provincial government has added tax after tax after tax, cost after cost, new regulations, new requirements that has made housing more expensive to build. And I always say to people, if you want more affordable housing, you have to make it less expensive.
Right.
And they don't understand that.
Easy, right?
Yeah, it's actually not that complex, but they make it much more expensive to build.
Now, you now explain to our audience the problem and the shortcoming of the present NDP government. With a BC United government, how are you going to deal with this issue? All those problems will still be around.
Well, first of all, you have to be honest with the public and say this isn't a problem we will be able to fix in 2 years. It is a problem that we're going to have to work on to fix very quickly. The way we can do that, number one, is working with municipal governments to make sure that their permitting process to approve new projects is speedy and it's fast. And we will reward the governments that are doing a good job. Many of them are, not all of them.
So you mean the municipal governments?
Municipal governments. Municipal governments, the province can control municipal governments.
Right.
We have the legislative ability to change everything they do. I want to work with them. There are good mayors out there. Malcolm Brodie, the mayor of Burnaby, Mayor Hurley, the mayor of Surrey. There's others out there that are wanting to do a good job and are building lots of housing. We need to support the ones that are doing a good job and penalize the ones that are doing a bad job. Then we as a province have to make sure we're not part of the problem, because under the NDP, trying to get permits for the environment, from the Ministry of Transportation, from the Ministry of Heritage, is unbelievably slow. And the NDP don't understand that to make it faster, you need to streamline the process. And instead what they're doing is saying, well, we're going to just hire more employees to tell the current employees who are slow how to do things faster. That doesn't work. No. So I think if we do that, and then if we look at the costs that government imposes on housing and take out those costs so that we can help make housing more affordable, we can do that.
Now, how about the foreign buyers? The federal government extend 2 years ban of foreign ownership. How about as a provincial government? Do you think the problem is dealing with the foreign investment? If there's less foreign investment, we can build more houses?
Right. No. Well, this is the problem. I mean, I do think that, there's very little foreign buyers buying our homes now.
You just explained 5% of those are purchased by foreigners.
Less than 5. It's actually a very small amount. And I know that because even when I was in the house building industry, working for a company that sold thousands and thousands, built more homes than the entire NDP government did over 10 years.
The company that you work for built more than the entire NDP government.
Anthem, absolutely. But we have to itemize every single person that's a foreign buyer. They're very, very few. We had less than 3% at our company in the 10 years that I was there. It's a very, very tiny amount. Now, some companies have more, it depends on where they're marketing, but for the most part, it's a very, very small percentage. So we have to make sure we're not just turning this into a blame game. The responsibility lies with government. Government is responsible for dealing with the housing crisis. They promised to do it, and they've ended up with the worst results in Canada, and in fact in North America.
Now, do you want to, I'm afraid always because of the government's policy and the news coming out, foreigner ban foreigner. They only purchase less than 3 in your company or 5 in general, less than 5. But in the global community of investors, they will think this is not a place I want to invest. But we want to attract foreign investment into our country to help us to build more houses.
Yes.
So I think this policy is not as good as they think.
This is a very good point. BC we are a small, open trading province. And as a part of the BC Liberal government, now called BC United, we actually opened up the Asia-Pacific Gateway Strategy. We worked to develop and expand.
When you were in government.
When I was in government. That was my job. I was the chair of the Asia-Pacific Gateway Strategy.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's why we were building the Canada Line, the Port Mann Bridge, the South Fraser Perimeter Road, expanding roads, railways, airports, because we recognize the opportunity of a growing Asia and the benefit, because we already had the cultural bridge to Asia with our large Asian population. That's a huge advantage we have. And so we wanted to expand that cultural bridge to an economic bridge. And you know, we can't do that if we're not a small open trading province. We need that foreign investment. It's always been really important for British Columbia's growth. One of the things I'm most concerned about right now is you look at this NDP government, the number of private sector job growth, the only province in Canada, we're seeing a net reduction in private sector job growth. All the job growth is in the public sector. It's government. They've increased the civil service by 36%. 36% in 7 years. But you know, that's 137,000 new jobs in government. But where is the benefit? You know, healthcare is not better. Our streets aren't any safer. Education's getting worse. So you know, this is a real problem for British Columbia.
Yeah, when we talk about cost of living, everything is more expensive. But if we can have more income, we may be able to support a good lifestyle, even if these costs keep on increasing. But the NDP want to change the land use legislation under the UN deal.
Yes.
So they want to have a veto power by the Aboriginal people on any Crown land development.
Yes.
Now, we are a natural resources province. We do a lot of natural resources development. With this new change of land use, how is it going to affect our natural resources, the job created by the natural resources, and the good income jobs in it?
Yeah, this is a terrible decision that the NDP government is trying to do. And they're trying to do it very quietly. They did not announce or even put out a press release that they were doing this. They just had a very quiet website that said, if you want to you know, have an opinion on this, please let us know. But then we discovered they're already drafting the legislation. It may in fact already be completed. And they're going to introduce it in this spring's legislative session. Here's what it means. It means that the government is going to have joint decision-making with First Nations. There are 204 different First Nations in British Columbia, representing about 200,000 Indigenous population. By having joint decision-making, what that means is they are providing a veto to First Nations, meaning that if they disagree with something, they can say no, nothing happens, okay? Now that's a problem, because 200,000 people will have decision-making power over 5 million people, representing 95% of the land in BC, which is public land, publicly owned land. That is a huge problem. And it's not something we will support. We've said very clearly we are against this, we're going to oppose this, and it's a very bad decision of this government. And by the way, UNDRIP is an aspirational document. It's like a document that says this is be a great place for us to get to in trying to get to reconciliation with First Nations. It does not mean we have to provide a veto. The Supreme Court of Canada has said on multiple occasions First Nations do not have a veto right. They do not. But the NDP wants to provide them that. That will be very bad for the economy, for all families, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, because it will tie up and stop economic development and decisions being made on the land base for the benefit of all of us.
Now, we still have 10 months, as you say, for the next provincial election in October. And the NDP is drafting this legislation.
Yes, absolutely.
And you haven't looked at it yet, because they haven't released to anyone.
No.
How are you going to deal with this issue? This is a very big issue. It deals with the 95% of the Crown land in British Columbia.
Absolutely.
And 5 million people's economic development will be vetoed by a small group of people that shouldn't have that right.
That's right.
So what are you going to do?
Well, we're fighting it as hard as we can. We're trying to raise public awareness. In part, that's why this discussion is so important. And you should understand, this isn't just me as an opposition. It's not just the opposition, you know, BC United, formerly the BC Liberals, that are talking about how dangerous it is. One of the top Aboriginal lawyers in the province, from Macmillan, one of the big law firms, Robert Younger, he's the one that came out and said this is a very dangerous, bad decision that the government's doing, and it will put the rights of land use for 95% of the public land into 5% of the population. That is not a good thing. And so we will continue to fight this, and I think it's very unfortunate that the NDP are trying to do such a massive change. You know, in an election year, if they are so confident this is the right thing to do, make it an election issue. Let's have a good debate about it in front of the public, and the public can decide whether they want to vote for the NDP and change all the way we deal with land in BC.
Now, another issue that related to economy or maybe related to environment is the carbon tax. Everyone has been talking about the carbon tax, and it's keep increasing. federal government, the NDP provincial government.
Absolutely.
They talk about it's good. It's good for the environment. And is it good for us? And what are you going to do about the carbon tax?
Sure. So, the thing that's important to remember is the BC Liberals brought in the revenue neutral carbon tax.
I remember that it's the BC Liberals that brought in that.
2008. But the reason, what we brought in was actually a tax that made a lot of sense. Because by law, all the revenue generated had to be returned to the public in the form of lower personal income taxes and lower business taxes. None of it could go to government. It all had to go back to the public. And so it was a tax shift. But the NDP got elected in 2017. They changed that. They changed the law and said, we're going to take all the money into government now. And then they more than doubled the carbon tax. And now David Eby and the NDP want to triple it in the next 6 years. And I've been very clear. We are not supporting that. In fact, I've said that we would take the carbon tax off of home heating fuels, whether it's natural gas, oil, or propane. We're going to take it off the agricultural sector and the ranching sector because that helps keep food prices down. And but we can't get rid of all of it because there's a federal carbon tax. So, the BC Conservatives say, oh, we're going to get rid of the carbon tax. They can't do that. There's a federal tax that backstops the provincial one. But I have said that if Pierre Poilievre becomes Prime Minister and he follows through on his commitment to eliminate the federal carbon tax, the BC carbon tax goes away too, because I am not going to be the only province with a carbon tax. And because I believe in reducing costs for families in British Columbia, not increasing them.
Now, once we talk about the carbon tax and the environment, another big issue, a lot of my friends, they said, oh, the government is now forcing me to buy an electric car, fully electric, and they're giving me some money to get rid of my gasoline car and buy an electric car. And those electric cars are so expensive.
Yes.
At least 50, 60,000, 70,000
yes.
for an electric car. And the NDP government said, it's okay, I'll give you some money. You can buy an electric car. Should we continue to use public money to force people to buy expensive electric car in a short time?
Well, no. In fact, I hear from a lot of people, especially working class. You get a carpenter or an electrician or a garbage man that is having to have his taxes go towards subsidizing people, sometimes very high-income people, to be able to buy an electric vehicle. And the NDP are saying that they are going to eliminate all gasoline vehicles by, is it 2030 or 2035? I think 2035. It's completely unrealistic. It is so unrealistic. And you can't do that because a lot of low-income people can't afford to buy an electric vehicle, exactly like you said. So we can encourage people to transfer to electric vehicles. In some parts of the province, it's very challenging. There's not enough charging stations. It gets very cold. The cars don't operate quite as well in minus 30-degree weather. That's a problem too. Now they're trying to say they want to eliminate natural gas as a home heating option.
You cannot even have natural gas stove.
Exactly. And this is very dangerous because already they've turned down Fortis BC, which is a major BC company, natural gas provider, wanted to expand natural gas in the Okanagan. They were going to invest $325 million to make sure that the homes have natural gas heating because it's growing. There's a big growing population up there. The NDP government said no. And that means that they are at risk of literally having blackouts and power outages in 2 years because they won't have the ability to heat homes. And this is very, very, it's stupid policies. During the last cold snap that we had, 22,000 megawatts came from natural gas, only 11,000 from electricity. Even in my own home, when the power goes out, and it goes out regularly during storms, if it wasn't for our natural gas fireplace, we would be freezing in our home.
Right.
No
electric power.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
So it's very short-sighted, and I find it very frustrating because I think they're taking us down a very dangerous path where British Columbians are going to be left in a position where we can't even heat our own homes because of this government's ideological approach to dealing with the environment.
Now, another important issue, particularly in the Chinese community, is the opioid crisis, particularly in the lower mainland. We can see the number, what the government has been doing the last few years. More people die of overdose.
Absolutely.
And they said, give out more free hard drugs, and we can save people. So what is BC United going to do?
Yeah, I'm so against this. They call it safe supply. There's nothing safe about these drugs.
Poisons.
Yeah, poisons. Nothing safe. Okay, these are publicly supplied addictive drugs. And every single year we see the overdose death rate get worse and worse. Last year, 2,511 people died. That is we've never seen those kind of numbers ever in the history of province of British Columbia. And in spite of that, 1 year ago, the NDP thought in addition to giving out free drugs, they're now going to decriminalize dangerous drugs like heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine. This is a disaster, and we have opposed it. Kevin Falcon, Fang Yigan, and the BC United team have said, no, we oppose decriminalization. And over a year later, we can see that we've got open drug use in parks and playgrounds and our beaches, and it's been a disaster. So I have been very clear. Within 90 days of being elected, I will cancel decriminalization. I'm going to bring in education into our schools so our young kids understand how drugs are very dangerous. This is what other countries do. They're very smart about it. They teach our kids to stay away from drugs so they don't have a life of drug dependency. And the final thing I'm going to do is say, just giving out free drugs to people struggling with addictions is not the answer. You have to provide free treatment so they can get better. I'm going to help them get better with treatment, involuntary if necessary. Take them off the street into care so they can be looked after and treated.
Now, the NDP provincial government talk about increase the number of detox beds. Are they doing that? How many?
This is
detox beds they make?
Well, this is the problem. They keep re-announcing old announcements. The problem is they just announced 100 beds. They said we're going to have 100 beds. Well, they announced that last year. We've actually only seen a net new 16 beds, 1-6. Okay?
1-6, not
1-6.
Oh.
Because I think at the end of the day, they think that the answer to the drug problems, they tell me this. The Premier has told me this. Because I said to him, I said, why on earth don't you bring in a law to protect our children in playgrounds? Why would you allow open drug use in playgrounds? The answer is, we don't want to stigmatize people.
Yeah.
We don't want people to feel bad about using drugs. And I say, well, that's crazy. We stigmatize smokers. We say you can't smoke inside a restaurant. You can't smoke in playgrounds and on beaches. You know, so why do we allow people to use drugs and heroin right in the middle of
You can't tell them that is bad. You can't tell them that is wrong.
No, exactly.
You have to be compassionate.
No, exactly, and I think that's very wrong. I think some stigma is a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing that people use drugs in playgrounds, and that's why decriminalization is so bad, because it took away a power the police always had to say, we're going to, you know, Ronald, if you want to use drugs in this park, we're going to take away your drugs. Now get out of here. That's what they would do. And so the NDP don't want that to happen. Oh no, they should be allowed to. I was talking to a nurse at the Nanaimo General Hospital who met with me and said, Kevin, they are allowing people to openly smoke methamphetamine in the hospital.
Wow.
Because they don't want to stigmatize people. This is madness. It has to stop.
And we have to start with education with our kids. But I was told in some school district, they used to have a program to tell the kids, drug is bad. Don't go near it. Mm-hmm. One of those programs got there, and they took away those programs.
Yes, they have, because the NDP think that stigmatizes drug use. And I'm telling you, I've got two daughters,
right.
11 and 14.
They're lovely.
I want them to be taught in the schools that drugs are dangerous, and they can really kill you, and that you should avoid use. You know, you have to understand, children, when they hear drugs are decriminalized, lots of kids think, oh, that means they're legal. And when they hear that there's safe supply, they think, oh, government drugs are safe. And we now have learned, we have been saying to this government that the drugs they're giving out for free are being diverted to high schools and colleges. The NDP denied that. Dr. Bonnie Henry said, no, that's not true. The opposition's making this up. Now they admit it. Just 2 days ago, Dr. Bonnie Henry said, yes, we acknowledge, we've heard from the addiction doctors that drugs are being diverted, but you know, maybe that's not a bad thing. You know, at least they're using safe drugs.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
How can it be not a bad thing?
Young children are dying. I talked to the father of a 14-year-old girl that died of an overdose using government's drugs because they were sold to the kids at her school, saying, kids, these are safe drugs. They're not safe. Hydromorphone, which is the free drugs they give out, is 5 times more powerful than heroin. And we don't want this going to our children. This government is going to ruin a whole generation. I really am very concerned about this.
We need to hear more about all those issues. And BC United is the party that is championing get rid of these free drugs.
Absolutely. And decriminalization.
And get rid of this decriminalization. But how can we hear more of that? There's not only 10 months left.
Yeah.
So how are you going to promote BC United and all those policy issues that's important across BC?
Yes, it is very important across BC. And look, I want you to understand that for some people struggling with addiction, a drug therapy to help them transition to treatment is appropriate, okay, with clinical supervision. The problem with this government is that they're just handing out, they have drug vending machines in Vancouver so that people can just go up to the vending machine and get their free drugs. And the problem is we know that many of the addicts are selling the free drugs to drug dealers. They call them dillies on the street, dillies. They sell them back to the drug dealers, take the cash, buy fentanyl, which is what they really want.
Oh.
And then those drugs get diverted to colleges and high schools. So we will get that message across, believe me. We're going to get that message across to the public. We're going to make sure the public knows that Kevin Falcon, Fungi Gun, is going to cancel decriminalization within 90 days of being in government. And we're going to educate our children about the danger of drugs. And we're going to focus on treatment. Not just giving out free drugs, but treatment to help people get off of their addiction.
Wow, there's so much we have to talk about. The economy, all the changes brought in by the NDP government, health issue, drug issue, and we haven't even touched the crime problem that we are facing.
Yes.
Well, you have to come back and we can talk more about these policy issues.
No.
They're so
We ran
important
out
to
of
all
time. It's so
our
important.
viewers.
Yeah, it's so important because the crime is a huge issue. And I just want to say about that, we have to have consequences for bad behavior. We are not. Under David Eby, he was the Attorney General for 5.5 years. He oversaw catch and release where people are arrested by the police do their job, but the Crown prosecutors release them almost right away, sometimes the same day. This is not good. There has to be a consequence for bad behavior. We will make sure there is.
We will make sure we talk about that because I think the good thing is you can tell us what is good, what is bad. There's the right and wrong thing.
Yes.
Not everyone is neutral. Okay, let's
Thank you.
talk about next time. 今日時間差唔多啦，咁多謝各位觀眾嘅收睇，咁多謝咧係 Kevin Falcon 馮義幹 BC United 嘅黨領，拜拜。